Excuse me, sir. CIC sir is with us.
Okay, welcome.
Sir, hearty welcome to you, sir.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Hearty welcome, sir. This is Dr. K.S. Bhatti, Dean of the Law College, sir. I extend you a very warm welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, thank you so much for accepting our request and gracing us with this enlightenment and blessing of yours, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. I, on behalf of IMS RTI Club, sir, welcome you, sir.
Dr. Vikalp Shrivastava is the convener of the RTI Club, sir.
Very good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Pulkit is the president of our RTI Club, sir.
Okay, good. Very nice.
Sir, our RTI Club is the first such institution which has been established in any educational institution. None of the any institution around this country has such club based specifically on exclusively on RTI.
Very, very creditable, I must say.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. We always try under our ambit, our umbrella to do a lot of activities. We have filed a lot of RTIs on various issues as well. And we try to keep up with the time, and like we have filed various RTIs on recently like on political donations. It's a very controversial subject. We have also filed RTI on that. We have filed RTI on the PM Relief Care Fund also, which is in the limelight recently, and also on various governmental schemes that have been launched by the government, which have certain element of suspicion. We have filed RTI. We as a club always try to forward forward the very aim of the RTI, that is transparency and accountability among the government machinery. So that is what we strive to do under our RTI club, sir.
Okay, very nice. Very nice.
सर बस एक कोशिश करते हैं कि मतलब थोड़ा सा ये काम कर सके, क्योंकि सर आरटीआई क्लब का स्टूडेंट ड्रिवन है, तो स्टूडेंट्स काफी एक्टिव रहते हैं. I only provide the guidance to all the students. It's just a students' initiative.
Okay, good, good.
So I think we can begin the session. Pulkit.
Yes, Professor Govind Goyal ji, we can commence the session.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
Pratiksha?
Okay, yes. A very good evening to our guest, faculty member, dean sir, and dear participant. Today, on behalf of IMS Law College Noida, I, Pratiksha, extend a very hearty welcome to each one of you present over here. We all have gathered here for the National Webinar or RTI and Role of Judiciary. Now, to begin the session further, I would like to call upon our respected dean sir to welcome our esteemed guest.
Thank you, Pratiksha. It's an honor and privilege for me to extend a hearty welcome to our distinguished guest, our Shri Rajiv Mathur sir. As a matter of fact, it was very heartening also when I was looking at the profile of sir. Then I saw he was the director of the Intelligence Bureau also once upon a time. And Mr. Ajit Doval happened to be my class fellow. He also, so he joined IPS and then became IB director. So I was recalling my old student days, that how Ajit Doval ji and we were together in Merit College, and thereafter in Roorkee we belong to both. So sir, it is a very hearty welcome. And on behalf of our management headed by Honorable Mr. Rajiv Gupta, our president, and CMD Mr. Shilpi Gupta, and all our seniors and all peers, I extend you a very hearty welcome. And so as Dr. Vikalp already mentioned, that it is the brainchild of our Honorable President Shri Rajiv Kumar Gupta ji, that he motivated us to establish an RTI club. He wanted that we should always motivate our students. They can always question the public authorities what they are doing. And with this motivation, this RTI club came into being. And as Dr. Vikalp said, probably we are the only institution in education an RTI club, manned by all our students. Mr. Pulkit Trehan is the president and other office bearers are also students. And the convener is Dr. Vikalp Srivastava, a very learned faculty member of the IMS Law College, sir. So, sir, here we had also the privilege of having many good people, those who are activists in the field of the Right to Information Act, that Commodore Batra, he was invited, and then Mrs. Kaur was also invited, and lastly, Mishra sir was also here. So we are very much keen to know and learn about the RTI, so that we are of the mind that we, on the basis of the information collected, we go for a public interest litigation, that what the government authorities that they are not doing there. We remember the SP Gupta's case. The Honorable Supreme Court itself said that all citizens have the right to know what the government agencies are doing for the country. And unfortunately, it is the subject is of very crucial importance, and will be enlightened to hear you that even the Honorable Supreme Court and other courts also, they have been playing down the provisions of the RTI club. They do not want the judiciary should come. And very unfortunately, various high courts also gave the different kinds of decisions and formed the rules also, which were contrary to the provisions of the RTI Act 2005. So this is, and lately we are also observing, sir, that the teeth given to the act by the founding legislators, that has also slowed down, and we feel probably the RTI club, having a very sacrosanct object, is failing to achieve the objects for which it was enacted. Nevertheless, sir, will be enlightened, will be motivated, and we would always look forward to your kind guidance, how the RTI club of our students, they can serve the society and can bring some kind of service to the people of our country in general. Sir, the IMS Law College is a very renowned college and a pioneer college in the NCR region, and has been credited by producing the toppers of the Chaudhry Charan Singh University. Our people have been very good debaters. They have been winning the competitions and award all over India. Our girls and boys, they are doing wonderful in the legal field. We have also got a legal aid clinic here with us. We have also got a human rights club with us. We have got several other activities which is manned by our students under the guidance of our faculty members. So here during the COVID-19 situation, we are very unfortunate that we could not have your physical presence in our campus, which is in Noida, where we would definitely be looking forward when the COVID is over, and then you grace our campus also, and we felicitate also. I was told also by our Dean Academics, Dr. Manju Gupta, that our president has especially, he has welcomed you, and he directed also to us that we can honor you by offering a shawl or memento, and unfortunately being a virtual platform, we are not able to, but definitely our people will have it delivered to your at your place. That is as per the direction of our president, Shri Rajiv Kumar Gupta sir. So I won't take much time here, and we would request you to kindly bless our students and guide our students with your noble words. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to call our faculty convener of IMS RTI Club, Professor Vikalp Srivastava sir, to tell us more about IMS RTI Club and today's event.
First of all, we are today, I would like to say that we are very fortunate to have with us a very distinct personality, Shri Rajiv Mathur ji, former Chief Information Commissioner and former Director, Intelligence Bureau. Sir, first of all, I, on behalf of entire IMS RTI Club, welcome you, sir, to today's webinar on the RTI and the role of judiciary. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation to enlighten us today about the various practical aspects and intricacies of the RTI Act. And I hope that today, by today's end of today's webinar, our participants and the students of the IMS RTI Club will be immensely benefited from the today's session. Let me tell you something briefly about the IMS RTI Club. The IMS RTI Club was inaugurated on 13th October 2018. As Dean sir has already pointed out, it is a brainchild of our Honorable President sir, Shri Rajiv Kumar Gupta ji. The club was inaugurated under the auspicious presence of Shri Arun Kumar, former Additional District and Session Judge Ghaziabad, and Dr. Archana Sinha, Additional District and Session Judge East Zaripur. Since then, we have conducted various seminars, conferences, workshops, legal aid programs, village adoption programs under an umbrella. And in furtherance of that, in our zeal to carry forward the light, to carry forward the way, object of the RTI Act to ensure transparency and accountability, we have today conducted this webinar. And lastly, I again thank you, sir, for joining us today. And I welcome also all the participants who have joined us today. And we can definitely, we will all be very well benefited from the today's session. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir, for your informative words. RTI is an act of the Parliament of India which set out the rule and procedure regarding citizens' right to information. Under the provision of RTI Act, any citizen of India may request information from the public authority which is required to reply expeditiously or within 30 days. While on the other hand, the judiciary plays an important role of interpreting and applying the law and educating upon controversies between one citizen and another, and between a citizen and the state. It is the function of the court to maintain rules of law in the court and to assure that the government runs according to law. With this, I would like to welcome our esteemed guest, Sri Rajiv Mathur sir, former Director, Intelligence Bureau of India, and a former Chief Information Commissioner of Central Informative Commission. After completing A in Political Science from the University of Allahabad, he was selected to the Indian Police Service in 1972 and allotted UP cadet. After serving in UP for over 6 years, joined the Intelligence Bureau in 1978 and worked in its various divisions with specialized experience in security-related subjects. He took over as Director, Intelligence Bureau in December 2008 in the immediate aftermath of the November 2008 Mumbai attack for a 2-year term. He served for over 3 years with the Ministry of External Affairs as Counselor, Embassy of India, Washington, D.C., and maintained liaison with the several U.S. government agencies pertaining to security, militancy-related issues, including FBI, Secret Service Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Justice Department, etc. He was the chairman of Asia Pacific World Regional Office, New Delhi, of the International Association of Chief of Police for 2 years. He was appointed as Information Commissioner, Central Information Commission in March 2012 and retired as Chief Information Commissioner in August 2014. He functioned as independent external monitor of OIL and ONCG for 3 years. We are very blessed to find such a person with such a great personality among us and request you to bless us with your kind words. Up to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your very kind words. Esteemed members of the faculty of IMS Law College, Professor K.S. Bhati, Professor Vikalp Srivastav, members of the RTI, IMS RTI Club, and fellow participants in this webinar. I am grateful to the IMS for having invited me to speak to you. It's a great honor. And I was very happy to note that you are perhaps one of the only institutions, educational institution in the country to have a specialized RTI club, which is something very creditable and very, very good. Now, when I had spoken to Professor Goel, the topic which was suggested for today was the RTI and the role of the judiciary. So I would confine my discussions primarily to how the judiciary in India has molded the RTI Act over the years and how important decisions have been arrived at from these interactions. But I will start with a brief background of this freedom of speech and expression, because RTI emanates from the freedom of speech and expression, and then come to the Indian context. Now, in almost all modern, progressive and democratic nations, freedom of speech and expression is accepted universally as one of the most important of freedoms. And consequently, the right to information is perceived to have been derived from this concept of free speech. So, while the citizens of a country seek information from their governments, in these countries which have adopted a law regarding sharing of information, this right is not unfettered. It is not an absolute right. And it is accepted universally in countries which have adopted the RTI law that a balance has to be maintained between how much of information can be shared and what can be denied. In the Indian context, it is primarily the judiciary which has been playing this balancing role. Now, historically speaking, there have been many thinkers who have promoted openness in government functioning and the need for transparency. And in the evolution of the concept of free speech, I would like to name an English philosopher and thinker, John Stuart Mill, who played, according to me, an important role in the position which we have arrived at today. In 1859, John Stuart Mill published an essay called On Liberty, which is considered as one of the best defenses of free speech of that period. Though Mill defended free speech, even he recognized that the liberty cannot be absolute and that people should only be restrained or stopped from acting when their conduct may harm another individual. These are his words. So today, we have a situation that in almost 128 countries of the world, some form of legal backing exists for a right to information, with Sweden having been the first country to have introduced such a legislation way back in 1766. The years following World War II, we see a strengthening of the mechanisms for accessing information from governments. And in the 20th century, one of the first major democracies to introduce a legislation empowering their people was the United States, which in July 1966 enacted what they call the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, which allowed persons access to information from the federal government. The US Supreme Court explained the significance of keeping the citizens informed and held it to be vital to the functioning of a democratic society. Now, in pursuance of this objective of the Freedom of Information Act, the US Congress has listed out 9 exemptions from disclosure, And these primarily revolve around personal privacy, national security, and law enforcement interests. Now, 4 years later, the United Kingdom enacted their Freedom of Information Act in the year 2000. Now, let's come to India. In India, the idea of a right to information has existed as an abstract legal right since 1975, when the concept that citizens have a right to know was first laid down by Justice K.K. Mathew of the Indian Supreme Court in the case of Raj Narayan versus the state of UP. Now, this is a very famous case in which Raj Narayan, in his petition, had demanded that the Blue Book, which was a secret document, should be produced. And it was resisted by the UP government. Now, I would reproduce what Justice Mathew has said, because this is extremely important so far as the RTI Act is concerned. He said that the people of this country have a right to know every public act, everything that is done in a public way by their public functionaries. They are entitled to know the particulars of every public transaction in all its bearing. The right to know, which is derived from the concept of freedom of speech, though not absolute, is a factor which should make one worry when secrecy is claimed for transactions which can, at any rate, have no repercussions on public security. This is what Justice Mathew said in the Raj Narayan case. Now, this was followed by a decision of the 7-judge bench of the Supreme Court in the S.P. Gupta case, which was referred to, I think, by Dr. Bhatti earlier in his introductory remarks. Now, this case, the S.P. Gupta case, once again reiterated the concept that the right to know was implicit in the right of free speech and expression. And in this case, the court had observed that the concept of an open government is the direct emanation from the right to know, which seems to be implicit in the right of free speech and expression guaranteed under Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution. So you find that one after the other, the judiciary has been actively suggesting that the right to information exists, and it is being derived from the freedom of speech and expression under 19(a) of the Constitution. Now, in 1986, in another case of Kulwal versus Jaipur Municipal Corporation, the Supreme Court held that freedom of speech and expression provided under Article 19 of the Constitution clearly implies the right to information, as without information, freedom of speech and expression cannot be fully used by the citizens. We move further, and the scope of Article 19(1)(a) was further widened by the Supreme Court in another case of the Association for Democratic Reforms by upholding the voters' right to know the antecedents of candidates contesting elections. And here, the court held that people have a constitutional right to know the antecedents of the candidates contesting elections for a post which is of utmost importance in a democracy. So we see that the judiciary has been playing a very, very positive role in expanding the role of the right to information even before the act came into being. Now, this right to information received a further boost when in 1989, the Supreme Court linked the right to information to right to life. And in this case of Reliance Petrochemicals versus Indian Express, the Supreme Court recognized that the right to know as emanating from the right to life in Article 21 of the Constitution. And it said, the right to know is a basic right which the citizens of a free country aspire in the broader horizon of the right to live under Article 21 of our Constitution. So we find that even before the RTI Act comes into being, we have the judiciary which has laid down the foundation for the right to information. Now, apart from these judicial pronouncements favoring the right to know, the need for promoting transparency and accountability in the government departments and institutions was also growing, with various social activist groups and public spirited citizens voicing a demand for a legislation on this subject. The civil society in India played a very major role in creating an environment favorable to an information legislation. Favorable statements were also made by the government, or rather the political leadership, not the government, the political leadership, which further quickened the pace for 2005. Now, in 1977, when the Janata Party came to power on the platform of an open government, the then Prime Minister Morarji Desai had constituted a working group with the objective of ascertaining whether the Official Secrets Act could be modified so as to facilitate greater flow of information to the public. The committee, however, recommended, it was made up of bureaucrats, so they, however, recommended that no change was possible. Then we come to when Mr. VP Singh became the Prime Minister. In his address to the nation in December of 1989, he said that we will have to increase access to information. And if the government functions in full public view, wrongdoings will be minimized. So in 1997, a working group was appointed under Mr. H.D. Shourie, and he was given the task of providing some kind of a draft bill. Then we come to the adoption of a Freedom of Information Act in 2002, which did not work out. And in 2004, when the UPA government came to power, in their common minimum program, they had promised that the Right to Information Act will be made more progressive, participatory, and meaningful. So we finally arrive in October of 2005, when the Right to Information Act finally came into being in the country. Now, when you look at the RTI Act, as all of you would have, it's a very short document containing 31 sections only. However, over the years, the petitions filed by RTI activists, civil society groups, and public spirited individuals, the decisions of the information commissions, as also the rulings of the judiciary, have expanded the scope of the RTI Act. As a result, the Information Act today has been constantly evolving. It's a live act. It has been evolving with clarifications being issued and added to its sections and fresh interpretation being given to its meaning. So when the RTI, now I'll take up some certain specific important cases which have been decided and what has come out of it. Let us start with the fact that the RTI Act was meant as an easy instrument for the citizens to seek information. So the cost fixed was ₹10 for filing an RTI and ₹2 as the price for a photocopying document. But the high courts and other competent authorities, by virtue of Section 2E and Section 28 of the RTI Act, which empowered the competent authority to make rules regarding fee payable, had fixed amounts exceeding ₹10. So the Allahabad High Court had fixed ₹500 as the RTI fee for one single information, and the Chhattisgarh Assembly was initially charging the similar amount. So when this anomaly was brought to the notice of the Central Information Commission, the Commission in January of 2012 had ordered, well, it's not an order, well, they had suggested to the Allahabad High Court to adhere to the pattern which has been set by the Supreme Court, which means charge ₹10. A petition was also filed simultaneously by an NGO in the Supreme Court, contending that the Allahabad High Court was charging rupees 500 per information and rupees 15 for every page of information, which was meant to discourage citizens from seeking information. And moreover, this was at variance from the rate which has been fixed by the center. It was also pointed out in that petition before the Supreme Court that the CIC had already ruled in favor of this. So the Supreme Court then disposed of all these petitions which had come up in March of 2018, which means 6 years, and fixing rupees 50 as the maximum fee and rupees not more than rupees 5 per page. So this brought considerable relief to the RTI persons who were seeking information from various organizations. It was also held by the Supreme Court in this particular order that public authorities shall not compel the RTI applicant to provide reasons for seeking information. This is very important. It was made clear also that this will apply to all institutions which are within the ambit of the RTI Act. So the Supreme Court made it very clear. Now, another important issue which came up once the RTI Act was enacted was file notings. There was an initial reluctance on part of the authorities to give copies of the file notings. So again, a demand for file notings was made before the Central Information Commission. And in January of 2006, the CIC ruled that a citizen has a right to information contained in file notings as it is information as per Section 2F of the RTI Act. But since there was a reluctance on part of the government to comply with the CIC decision, and at one point of time, the government was even considering amending the RTI Act. In fact, when I was going through the old records, I find that the then Union Parliamentary Affairs Minister had clarified that amendments were being considered to the RTI Act because the UPSC had objected to disclosure of file notings. And the UPSC had said that while decisions could be conveyed, the details and the process as to how the decision was arrived at should not be disclosed. So the CIC kept on sending repeated reminders to the DOPT that they should change their website, because the DOPT in their website had said that the file notings were exempt. So every public authority would quote that. Finally, in 2009, the DOPT corrected its circular and said that file notings can be disclosed except those containing information which is exempt under the exemption clauses, that is Section 8 of the RTI Act. Now this brings us to the exemption clauses. Now here again, the judiciary has been playing a very active role in clarifying the exemption clauses of the RTI Act and laying down very significant decisions in interpreting them. Now, many RTI practitioners consider the provisions of Section 8 and 9 as a dilution to the provisions of the RTI Act and hold that exemptions under Section 8 are the exception rather than the rule. But when you look at the preamble to the RTI Act, it speaks of striking a balance between the right of the public and the preservation of confidential information. So once again, we look to the Supreme Court, and the court has given a very positive interpretation in the Aditya Bandyopadhyay case, in which the court observed, and I quote, when Section 8 exempts certain information from being disclosed, it should not be considered to be a fetter on the right to information, but as an equally important provision protecting other public interests essential for the fulfillment and preservation of democratic ideals. So over the years, the judiciary has ruled on many of the sections relating to the exemption clauses. And I would very briefly refer to some of the important ones. Now, Section 81D refers to intellectual property rights. Exemption under, because it is. In this particular case, the Delhi Metro Rail Corporation had refused to disclose structural drawings of a pillar which had collapsed. So the matter was went up to the court, and the DMRC, the Delhi Metro Rail Corporation, had said that this information cannot be shared because it is intellectual property rights. So the Delhi High Court struck it down and said that under as per section 9 of the RTI Act, the DMRC is a state, inverted commas, a state, and hence cannot take the plea of infringement. This right is available only to a person. Then we come to another very important section, which is section 81E, information which is held in fiduciary relationship. And in this case, the Supreme Court had decided in the case of Aditya Bandyopadhyay versus the CBSE. Now, the issue before the court was whether an examinee had a right to access his answer sheets. The CBSE had advanced the argument that the evaluated answer script are held by the CBSE in a fiduciary capacity and hence cannot be disclosed. There were various other pleas, but this was the thrust of their plea. So the Supreme Court rejected this outright, and they said that as per section 81E, this is not held in fiduciary capacity, and therefore today you have a situation in which students can seek copies of their answer script because of this particular order. A related exemption clause was section 81G, which refers to the disclosure which would endanger the life or physical safety of an individual. Again, in this case of Aditya Bandyopadhyay, which I have referred to just now, the Supreme Court had allowed inspection of the answer sheets or copies of the answer sheets, but had ruled that the names of the examiner, scrutinizer, coordinator, and head examiner, if they are mentioned on the answer sheet, will not be disclosed. And it was felt that as disgruntled examinees, this is what the court said, disgruntled examinees not satisfied with the evaluation of the answer book may endanger the physical safety of the examiner. Now, exemption under 81G was further expanded by the Supreme Court in the case of Bihar Public Service Commission versus Syed Hussain Abbas, with the Supreme Court ruling that the names and addresses of members of interview boards are also exempt from disclosure under this section. So these are some of the very, very important issues. Then we come to section 81H, information which would impede the process of investigation. Now here basically this case was decided by the Central Information Commission. When a person who was being charge sheeted, income tax person was charge sheeted, and the person had asked for the copies of the copies of the documents which had led to the action, and the income tax department had observed that the process of prosecution, so the CIC had ruled that the process of prosecution is a continuing process which can be said to be over only when all judicial remedies have been exhausted. In this particular case, since the matter was still pending before the court, the CIC had held that this information cannot be shared. Now, section 81J, which is very, very important because it relates to personal information. Now here the courts have been by and large conservative on the issue of privacy and have held that third-party information, which is not related to any larger public interest, would be exempt. A very important decision is in the case of Girish Ramchandra Deshpande, where the court held that several of the informations which they have listed out cannot be shared. And these are the performance of a employer and employee, basically between the performance of an employee or an officer, they said, is a matter between the employer and the employee and is personal information which cannot be shared. Then it held that copies of memos, show cause notices, departmental actions, censure notices, punishments, these are also matter between the employer and the employee, and they cannot be shared with any third party. Then they said details of an employee relating to his assets and liabilities, movable and immovable properties, gifts, etc., are also exempt. And lastly, copies of income tax returns are also personal information and cannot be shared, unless, of course, the larger public interest can be proved. Now, in 2019, the Supreme Court took a very major decision when it brought itself under the purview of the RTI Act. But to briefly recapitulate, in 2009, the CIC, in response to petitions, had directed the Supreme Court to disclose correspondence between the Collegium and the government regarding appointment of 3 Supreme Court judges. The same year, in another order, the CIC had asked the Supreme Court to disclose information regarding declaration of assets by the judges of the Apex Court. Now, the CIC directive was challenged by the Supreme Court in the Delhi High Court. So it went before a single bench which upheld the CIC order. It went to a 2-member bench. They also upheld the CIC order. It was referred finally to a 3-member bench of the High Court, which decided to refer the matter to the Supreme Court because they felt that this was constitutional issues were involved. In the Supreme Court itself, the matter was first discussed amongst a 2-judge bench, then a 3-judge bench. And in 2018, finally, the case was referred to a 5-member constitution bench. And finally, in November 2019, the Supreme Court held that judicial independence does not stand in contradiction with the need for transparency. It observed that whether or not information is subject to public disclosure must be decided on a case-to-case basis by weighing competing public claims. So this was a very important decision. Then another decision which was decided by the CIC, but which awaits a final resolution even today, relates to the status of political parties. Now, if you would recall, in June of 2013, in response to a petition, the CIC had held that 6 national political parties were public authorities under Section 2A of the RTI Act, which if you look at it, it talks of substantially financed by the government, directly or indirectly. So the CIC had held that the political parties perform public duties. They get indirect favors from the government in the form of land for their office buildings, income tax exemptions, free airtime on All India Radio and Doordarshan, and therefore they are public authorities. But the political parties refused to comply with the decision of the CIC. The petitioners then moved the Supreme Court in 2015, which issued notices to the central government and to the 6 political parties, the national political parties. Now, the DOPT, in their response in August 2015, held that the CIC decision was wrong, as political parties cannot be public authority, as they are formed neither under the Constitution nor under any law of Parliament. And as to their financial transactions, there were enough safeguards available under the Representation of People Act and the Income Tax Act. So they rejected it. Now, meanwhile, the government introduced a bill in 2013 to amend the RTI Act and to exclude political parties from its purview. But the bill lapsed in 2014 after dissolution of parliament. Now, in 2018, another RTI was filed seeking details of donations received by the 6 political parties under the electoral bond scheme. By that time, the electoral bond scheme had come, and therefore an RTI was filed seeking information on this. Now, in 2019, a petition was again moved before the Supreme Court that political parties be recognized as public authority by the Central Commission were reiterated. So a final decision on this particular issue is still awaited. Now, a new dimension has been added to the right to know when in July of 2020, a writ petition filed by a third-year law student of Nirma University seeking public access to virtual court hearings. Now, the Gujarat High Court observed, and I quote, "The right to know and receive information is one of the facets of Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution, and for which reason the public is entitled to witness the court proceedings involving issues having an impact on the public at large or a section of the public, as the case may be." So the Chief Justice of the Gujarat High Court has ordered that the modalities should be worked out so that the people at large, including the media, have access to watch virtual hearings. Now, in conclusion, I would like to refer to an issue which is yet to be adjudicated upon, though it has been a matter of public discourse for some time. And this relates to the filing of vexatious and frivolous RTIs. Now, in 2011, the Supreme Court in the Aditya Bandyopadhyay case had said, and I quote, "Indiscriminate and impractical demands under the RTI for disclosure of all and sundry information unrelated to transparency and accountability will adversely affect the efficiency of the administration." And it goes on to say that the nation does not want a scenario where 75% of the staff of public authorities spends 75% of their time in collecting and furnishing information to applicants instead of discharging their regular duties. Now, somewhat similar views were expressed by our former Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh, when he was addressing the CIC annual convention in 2012. And he had observed that there are concerns about frivolous and vexatious use of the RTI Act in demanding information which cannot possibly serve public purpose. Such queries serve little productive purpose, are a drain on the resources of public authority, and divert precious man hours. Now, the CIC has been grappling with this issue, and very recently I came across a newspaper report. In June 2020, the Central Information Commission dismissed in one single go 141 RTI petitions filed against the Delhi Lieutenant Governor's office, calling it a misuse of the transparency law to inundate the office with pleas seeking information unrelated to it. And finally, in December 2019, a bench of the Supreme Court headed by the Chief Justice, which was hearing a plea regarding filling up of vacancies of information commissioners in the CIC and the SICs, raised the issue of abuse of the RTI law by those who have no connection with the information sought and felt that it was necessary to evolve some kind of safeguards and guidelines to regulate this. The court held that while they were not opposed to transparency law, there was a need to evolve some mechanism to ensure that only affected or concerned persons take recourse to this power, thereby possibly introducing the concept of a locus for those seeking information. So, gentlemen, I come to the end of my submissions. Next month, I would conclude by saying this, that next month, the RTI Act would be completing 15 years. And this certainly seems to be an appropriate time to do an introspection and to critically examine our gains in the last 15 years and the path forward. A lot will depend on young people like you, who would be the torch bearers for the right to know in the years to come, and to ensure that the preamble to the RTI Act, that is to promote transparency and accountability, is carried forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for such illuminating words and to share with us the great experience you have. It was certainly immensely helpful in understanding the matter in hand. Now, today we have lots of questions with us. So I would like to present the question before you. So the very first question is, how far RTI reports be considered purely authentic in judiciary?
I beg your pardon, I couldn't hear you.
So can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, the very first question is, how far RTI reports be considered purely authentic in judiciary?
I'm not very clear as to what the person is asking, but the fact is that an RTI response is an authentic document of the government, of a government department. I mean, you're all aware that when you seek information from a particular government department, it comes under the signature of the CPIO of that particular department. So it is perfectly authentic, unless, of course, somebody has played mischief and a false document purported to have been issued by a CPIO is produced before the court. That's a different matter.
Okay, sir. So thank you so much. The second question is, why can't we file RTI on PM CARES Fund?
Why has it been denied? I'm not very sure of this, because whether it has been denied or not, I don't think it has been challenged so far.
I don't know.
Well, perhaps Dr. Bhati or somebody else would know, but to the best of my knowledge, which is not up to date in any case, it has certainly been, this issue has been raised in the parliament, but whether an RTI has been filed on this and a response received.
What is the exact question? I couldn't make out.
So the question is, why can't we file RTI on PM CARES Fund?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. And the matter is already sub judice. It is before the courts.
Okay.
Some people have gone to the court to declare PM CARES Fund as a public authority. So that matter is sub judice.
Thank you, Dr. Bhati.
No, sir, it's a situation like this now.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So the third question is, why RTI is important and how can law students play their role in it?
How can law students play a role in it?
Yes, their role in it.
Well, I just gave you an example of how a law student of third year had filed an RTI before the Gujarat High Court, and I forgot to mention that when I was reading the judgment, the court has found this youngster to be a brilliant student and has commended him for his initiative. So I think that yes, I mean the law students or anybody, any public spirited person, they have a major role to play, because all these various important issues which I have gone through, such as the fee being regulated from 500 to 50 rupees, the information file notings, etc. Then there are so many other issues on which it is born on the basis of petitions which have been filed that the law has evolved. So yes, certainly, law students have a very major role to play. And in fact, in my concluding remarks, I had also mentioned that you are the torch bearers
Yes.
and you will carry the RTI forward.
And that CBSC's case also was taken by a student.
By
That
a
much
student.
case.
Yes.
Yes, sir. So the next question is, sir, according to you, is there any changes required in RTI?
That's a very omnibus question. I I really can't answer that. I mean, it is for the youngsters who are coming up. But you know, as I said, the RTI Act is an evolving act. It's a live act. You know, from starting from a small booklet, you see the enormous amounts of decisions which the courts have given, expanding its role, elucidating what exactly it means. So yes, there are so many areas in which the RTI Act can be expanded. The political parties case itself is pending, whether they should be brought under the purview of the RTI Act or not. And as Dr. Bharti has just mentioned, even the RTI has been filed on PM cares. So you know, every day, every year, the new issues will come up, and RTI activists will find ways and means to seek information, and ultimately the judiciary will play a major role in.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So the next question is, what are the reasons or challenges faced by the RTI departments that they could not solve those cases? And what are the penalties that one has to pay in case of default of not answering the RTI queries?
You are referring to the powers of the information commissions. What action can the information commissions take against the CPIOs? Is that what you are asking?
Sir, it's like what are the challenges faced by the RTI department that they could not answer certain questions?
No, it's by RTI department. Are you referring to the public authorities or are you referring to the Central Information Commission? Let me, it's not very clear. What does he mean by RTI department? You see, if the RTI, by RTI department, the gentleman is referring to the information commissions, there are certain shortcomings in the sense that, you know, the CIC cannot enforce a decision. At best, all it can do is that fine the CPIO. 24,000 rupees or 25,000 rupees, I forget, that is the maximum which you can impose a fine on him. The CIC also can recommend departmental action against the persons who failed to deliver information, and it is up to that organization to take action. But it has no powers to enforce. It has no powers to enforce their decisions. If the question is that the RTI CPIOs, why are they not responding to a particular information? Then of course it's a question which will have to be seen as to what exactly the information was sought and what were the grounds on which this information was denied. Those will have to be looked into.
Okay, sir. So the next question, it's very common question, and the question is, what are the career opportunities in RTI?
What are the career opportunities in RTI, is it?
Yes, sir.
Well, you know, this is a social service. It is basically a social service which you are doing. Other than that, in the RTI, you can certainly aspire to join the state information commissions or the central information commissions, which is, of course, you know, at a higher level. There are various positions which are available in the state information commissions and the central information commissions, but those are very limited. So career prospects in the RTI, I'm not very sure as to what could be the, you know, but for the fact that, you know, if you are a, if you are a, like any good lawyer, you know, people come to you for, if you're involved in a particular case, if you become an RTI specialist, then, you know, people can come to you and will pay you money so that you advise them as to how and in what way to seek information. So it can be a career prospect.
Okay, sir, thank you. So the next question is, should appointment procedure of Chief Justice of India and other judges comes under RTI Act?
Whether it comes under the RTI Act or should it
Yes,
come
sir.
under the RTI Act? No, it
Should
doesn't come. Should it come?
Yes.
No, I'm not very clear on this issue. What exactly is he wanting to know? Because, I mean, there is a laid down procedure for appointment of the judges of the Supreme Court. There is a collegium which has been established. The collegium means the Supreme Court Chief Justice and 4 senior most judges. They decide on who is to be appointed to the bench of the High Court and the Supreme Court. They send their nominations to the government. The government then looks into the proposals and either accepts them or differs with the collegium. You would recall that the NJAC bill which was passed, the Judicial Accountability Bill, that was declared as null and void by the Supreme Court. So after that, it is the collegium which is doing this. Okay.
Sir, one question that I would like to ask you, sir, is what about the PM Care Fund that is being discussed and it has been a center of controversy for a very long time, in which RTI, several RTI has been filed, including us also, in which the government has clearly said that the fund does not constitute a government body, so the information under it could not be disclosed. What's your take on that?
You see, in the absence of complete information and what exactly is the constitution of the PM Cares, it's very difficult to say anything. And in any case, as it has been clarified by Dr. Bhatti, this matter is already sub judice. So it would not be correct to sort of give my view when the matter is sub judice.
Sir, one more thing that I would like to ask you, sir, as you have said that a lot of people filed frivolous RTIs as well over a period of time. A lot of people have filed RTI who harass other people. Would there be any provision in the RTI Act which provides for some kind of a penalty or a fine with all those people who have repetitively used the RTI Act against some government body or against a particular person? Could there be a possibility?
Well, you see, this is a major problem because when I was in the Information Commission also, we had such cases, which are few, but you know, disgruntled government employee thrown out of the service, has gone to the courts, lost everywhere. Then he starts resorting to RTIs and, you know, seeking information which has really no bearing on what was the stated purpose of the RTI Act. So this is an issue which needs to be looked into, you know, because I've, in cases, I remember, you know, 100 RTIs, 200 RTIs, and the government departments or the individual concerned, you know, they literally don't know what to do. So there is a need. And that's why I very deliberately mentioned, you know, that it has been mentioned by the Honorable Chief Justice of the Supreme Court himself in December 2019. He himself has said in that judgment that, you know, there is a need to look into this aspect. So I'm sure that in the years to come, some kind of a procedure would need to be established so that these kind of frivolous RTIs or RTIs meant to hurt unnecessarily could be sort of controlled. I don't know what form it will take, whether there would be a punitive fine or any action on that. Because, you know, again, it's a very delicate balance. Who will decide that this is a frivolous RTI or not? How do you decide that? You see, it's a very delicate.
Sir, we are very honored to have today Commodore Lokesh Batra with us. also. I heartily welcome you, sir. Are you able to hear, sir?
Thank you. Thank you for, first of all, let me wish former Chief Information Commissioner Rajiv Mathurji greetings of the day. I don't know if you recognize me.
Thank you very much, sir. How can I not recognize you? You are a famous personality, one of the, the well name, and I certainly recognize you.
We are honored to have him here, sir.
Sorry if I have a break in between because net is very unstable. But few things I want to tell. I mean, since PM Care question has been asked, because I have number
Yes.
of RTIs, it's very clear that in Parliament on Lok Sabha discussion 4 days ago, totally the government had misled the people as such. I can say with authentic. They said they have gone to Supreme Court and Supreme Court has rejected it. First, let me tell you what was the case. Case is filed by one of the NGO and taken up by Prashant Bhushan. Case was generally related to COVID situation, but one of the prayer was the PM Care Fund should be transferred to the NDRF, that is National Defense Response Fund. Now, this is a fund which is created for these purposes. COVID is a disaster. Disaster Act has been enforced in March. The money should go there. The situation was that this clause of section 46(1)(b) in the Disaster Management Act categorically said individuals as well as the institutions can contribute to this. Sadly, this was never made functional till I started working on in April, starting with Secretary and Member Secretary and DMA. Today I was just sending a PPT to sharing with everybody. I don't have your WhatsApp, I can share with you, but I'll share with Bhati Saab. It took us quite some time to get it functional. My simple question letter went to Home Secretary and I said, look, law says so, very simple letter. I want to contribute, please guide me how to do about it. It took time, but every time I called up somebody, they said, why don't you give it to PM Care Fund? Now, I'm not saying beyond that. It's understood why it was not being made functional. Today, the entire money should be, the Supreme Court said, no, that is a public charity fund and this is it. But the question is, Parliament was told that Supreme Court has rejected the PM Care Fund. The case was never there to make it under the RTI because PMO is not the PMO. They say it is a PM, but still it's not a PMO. It doesn't come under the RTI Act under Section 2H, which is actually untrue. If you look at, you have already taken enough of public cash. What happened, the discussion went on to the previous fund, Prime Minister National Relief Fund, which annoyed me a huge lot because the CIC orders are very clear that information has to be provided. It started with Shailesh Gandhi case and Vajadji had decided it. And subsequently, many commissioners have said it has to be there. The reason being, it's running from the PM. Prime Minister is not like anybody else. He's a constitutional head. Now, that case was challenged in the Delhi High Court. Now, Delhi High Court, this case came up in 2015. Justice Enlaw very categorically said it is, they did not specifically say, but he did not stay. He said CIC order is very correct. That is National Relief Fund, which was started earlier. But again, this government challenge, it went to division bench, Justice Bhatt, and there was another judge. Beautiful argument put up by Justice Bhatt. If you look at it, I can share again that order. But his brother judge did not agree. So the matter was in 2018 asked to be referred to Chief Justice of Delhi High Court. And the matter is still languishing. But as things stand, the order of CIC was not at all stayed. I can share both orders with Dr. Bhati. Now the point is, it annoyed me a lot when I was listening to Lok Sabha. In fact, my blood started boiling. To what kind of lies or misleading? I won't use the word lies, but you are misleading the public at large. In 1948, the fund was started, and then, I mean, I wouldn't like to say the former Prime Minister name was there, the family and things like this. But the reality of it, is 1973. The matter was taken to Income Tax Department to get call it a trust, and income tax rebate was, exemption was taken. In comes 1985, the entire powers, there was no trustee. Earlier they used to be called managers. There was no trustee, and everything was given to the Prime Minister of the day. Prime Minister of the day, I repeat. And after 1985, we have seen number of Prime Minister coming and going. He can run this fund with the help of his, use the word manager, like secretary is running, joint secretary, which is helping them out. But they kept on saying in Lok Sabha. Then what I did, if you look at that, immediately I had nothing else to immediately get a media story to put correct facts. So we did it hurriedly with National Herald, because I thought Rajya Sabha, this discussion will come. Let people know the truth. And our clueless opposition knew nothing about it. They could not even defend it. Yeah, after 85, so many prime ministers have changed. The entire power lies with the prime minister. It's categorically said about on the website also. So question is that these kind of things, our problem is our opposition is also does not cope with it. So I talked to one of the.
We will have a session on this also, sir. Oh,
No, I just wanted to give, because a lot of question came on PM Care. PM Care, a lot of public cash has been taken. I have filed number of stories. Entire government machinery has been used. So there is no question of it is not coming, and the matter is still in Delhi High Court. One of our leading activists, Venkatesh Nayak from CHI, is also intervening. So that is what it is. But what was said in Parliament, no, all courts have rejected the PM Care Fund to be public authority. That is what it was. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. So nice of you, sir, for gracing the occasion.
Something of a 8H also. Justice Bhatt judgment was very clear, upheld the CIC order, that even if the investigations are going on, you cannot wait, people cannot wait to get justice. They need the information that should be given. But it mentioned at what stage. Because people are more important than police can continue till the final judgment comes. That's also there. When we go to Bandyopadhyay judgment, if you look at after para 35 or 38, now I don't recollect immediately, but that was not the case. They went ahead without any reasoning, without any prayer to trying interpreting the RTI Act. And when lastly, where you said the Chief Justice said misleading, I am the petitioner in that incident. Till today, 2014, not a single information commissioner has been appointed unless the court nudged them. So your appointment was the last on 23rd May, if I remember, because the previous government thought Chief CIC should not be left headless, he being the admin. That is 2 days before the oath taken. Otherwise, selection.
Yes, sir. The theme of the discussion.
No, I am just saying.
The CIC, sir, what role of the judiciary on this? The part of the government is playing. We'll have a discussion.
I'm not part of it. I'm talking of some of the comments made on this that case where the Justice Borde said that case was we had to take the case back from their own decision, non-compliance of Supreme Court order of 15th Feb. There was no reason.
I'm
going to stop at that, but
sir, my submission is, as Rajiv Mathur sir has said, 15 years of the RTI Act will be completed in October. So we can have a session and we can deficiencies, whatever have been observed by the leading activists like you, we can have a session and we can, under the RTI Club of the MS Law College, we can formulate a questionnaire. And we can make a suggestion also to the government that these deficiencies in the Act have been observed by the experts in the field, activists like you. And then we can have a session if you will spare some time for us.
Thank you. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Bhatti, sir, for concluding remarks, sir. Please.
Thank you, Professor Govind Goyal ji. I must convey our very sincere and heartfelt happiness that such an illuminating lecture by the distinguished guest, Shri Rajiv Mathur sir, it has been very, very a source of great information to us, that I was wondering that he has quoted all series of the court decisions relating to the RTI Act. The RTI Club must bring out a monograph like all decisions given on the RTI Act by the Honorable Supreme Court or by the High Courts or by the CIC, etc. I also wish that CIC should have been given the power of the court itself. As the questioner, one question was asked that punishment what can be awarded for a frivolous kind of, so sir has responded that 25,000 up to rupees can be imposed as a penalty for this kind of question. So some kind of power of the court, particularly the power under this IPC given to the court of law, should also be possessed by the commissioner. So I would only conclude by saying that we are very enlightened. We are very happy to have a discourse by Rajiv Mathur sir. It has really touched our heart also and mind also. We are so happy to learn so much of it, and through the contribution by the Supreme Court. As I said in the introductory remarks, that probably the courts are also not very active, proactive with regard to the promotion of the RTI object. But as sir has mentioned, that the courts have been the great support and great pillar for the advancement of the RTI Act and philosophy. So we hope that with sir's guidance and other people's also, our students that can work upon that thing. What sir had said that there is a great lot of career also. The community lawyering demands that our students should go to the people and then understand their problems, and through our legal aid program, through our RTI program, they should solve the problems of the people. It is the lawyer only who can deliver the goods to the society. Others are not capable, or they are not that way sensitive also to this. So I would only say, I would really compliment you also, Govindji, that you requested sir, and sir was kind enough to give consent. And today what lecture we have heard from him, it has been very illuminating.
Absolutely right, sir. We are grateful
And
to him.
it is, we are very extremely grateful, sir. And now we have to convey to the Honorable President also that it was a wonderful lecture. It was our students are. After a lot of programs, I have found today that maximum questions were asked to sir only. Otherwise, there were dearth of questions also. But I was feeling when the last question is coming. So it was a very wonderful, very enjoyable session. Our extreme gratefulness to you, sir. We are illuminated. We are enlightened. We owe a great knowledge to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Today we were blessed to have such a wonderful guest who enriched our life with the share of knowledge. And to thank him, now I would like to call upon Professor Dr. Neeti Sinha ma'am to present the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Pratyaksha. Respected guest speaker for today's webinar on RTI and role of judiciary, Shri Rajiv Mathur sir ji, and Commodore Lokesh Batra sir, respected in IMS Law College, Dr. K.S. Bhati, Program Coordinator, Professor Govind Prasad Goyal, Faculty Convener of RTI Club, IMS Law College, Dr. Vikalp Srivastav, and all the delegates who are part of this webinar, and dear students. It's a great day for all of us. We have been very fortunate to have such level of guest speaker in our webinar and on such an important topic, because as we all know, and as sir has also focused, that the citizen of our country to be more vigilant, government functioning, and whatever situation is there, if any citizen is not aware, they are not going to understand the things. And secondly, he also said this, that judiciary has to put the line and make the balance, that where we have to put the line between the right to information should be protected, be it examiner, any income tax related word. So definitely we all are comprehensive manner and understanding manner. You made things you discussed things in such a interesting way that our students are really benefited. So first of all, for this webinar, first of all, I'd like to thank Almighty, who is always with us and who guides us whenever we organize such program, and his presence is always needed for all of us. So thank you Almighty for giving us this opportunity to learn on such important topic. Then I would like to thank our top management, our President Sir, Sri Rajiv Kumar Gupta Sir, and CMD Ma'am, Shilpi Gupta Ma'am, for always supporting us in organization of such important webinar and workshop for the benefit of our students. Then I would like to thank our Senior Director Ma'am, Dr. Kulneet Suri, who is a constant support for all of us in different programs, and whenever there is a proposal, she is always there for all of us. Our Dean Academics, Dr. Manju Gupta, she is the one who guides us and who tells us that how the program should be conducted, and when how more and more our students should be benefited with such programs. And yes, our Dean Sir, Dr. K.S. Bhati Sir, as we all know, he is a constant support and source of inspiration for all of us for organizing such programs in our college campus. And when we are on organizing online programs, in that also his support is always there. So thank you, sir. I'd like to thank our program coordinator, Professor Govind Prasad Goyal, for organizing such a wonderful webinar on this such important topic. And yes, the faculty convener support is always there, Dr. Vikalp Srivastav. And yes, our another guest who is present in this webinar, Lokesh Batra sir, your input is also very insightful, and our students are very much benefited from that. And I'm thankful to all the delegates who are part of this webinar and put such interesting questions in front of our guest speaker in this webinar. And I'd like to thank all the RTI Club members for again organizing such good workshops and webinar for the students' benefit and delegates' benefits. So thank you, Pulkit and Prataksha, for anchoring the webinar in such a wonderful way. So I'm thankful to all for the technical support also, thankfully, because in this online process, sometimes we are stuck with the technical problem also. But fortunately, today was the good day and the program was conducted very smoothly. So thanks for the technical support also to Atima ma'am and all those who are part of it and who are directly or indirectly supported this program and helped in organization of this program. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you,
And
sir.
thank you so much, sir. We are extremely grateful to you. And I may just quote one line of it. Let us be grateful to those people who make our souls blossom, our minds enlightened, and our spirits uplifted. And one among such great sparking lights is Shri Rajiv Mathur, former CIC, who himself is a great torch bearer and beacons light to us. Thank you so much, sir, once again, for your kind words and motivating here and insightful delivery of this webinar on RTI and role of judiciary. Thank you, sir, once again.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Thank
Thank you. So
Thank you
kind
so
of
much,
you,
sir.
sir. Thank you, sir.
Pleasure. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone present. Thank you.